Hey, what's going on, guys? I'm going to be going over all of the wizard spells really quickly, and the ones that I use, also the ones that I don't use, and why I don't use them, and what spells are used for what. So, to start off with, I'm going to start with the left side. I usually like to split my spell wheels like this, so I have all of my damage spells on the right, and then more utility spells on the left with one damage spell because they don't all fit on the right. Starting with haste, essentially this is going to give you movement speed, action speed, and spellcasting speed for 8 seconds. So it's a really good engage. Apart from that, if you're playing any kind of buff ball comp, you'll be using this spell to buff your teammates to give them that movement speed, give them the action speed, and then probably going in with an Invis to send them in. So the way that I would use haste is before you engage, you always want to be hasted just so you have that extra movement speed. You're not getting, unless you're in a kit like this. For example, I have 312 move speed. So whenever I have my book out, I'm still positive, but having the extra 5% will actually make it so I can cast spells and kite and not actually get caught up by a melee class, except for possibly a rogue. Moving on, we have invisibility. Invisibility is really, really good for engaging. So if you need to take space against the enemy and you need to push up, you'll probably pop an invisibility after it haste. And Invis gives you movement speed as well. So these two together, you'll get a combined 10% movement speed. Now, the way you want to use this, you're either going to use it to disengage and run away from an enemy, or you're going to use it whenever you need to engage an enemy. And you have to play around with the after images a little bit. It doesn't say it here, but there is an after image for every 1.5 seconds. You'll leave sort of an after image, and you can use that to kind of like peek a corner, after image, make them think that you're pushing, and then go back around the corner. And let's say like a cleric is holding an earthquake, for example. A really good tactic is to not actually go in, but fake a haste. So cast it, cancel it, cast the invis, cancel it, and then, pop an earthquake, for example. So you don't actually need to always cast these to sort of like bait an earthquake, because people are used to holding an earthquake on a doorway to stop a invis push. So yeah, this combination of spells is really, really powerful. Light Orb. Light Orb is basically your bread and butter of entering a room. If you know that there's a team comp with a rogue inside of it, then as annoying as it is, you'll have to constantly just Light Orb everything. You'll have to Light Orb all the corners, Light Orb before you push in. If you're fighting that team and you have a flank on your right, for example, let's say there's a door, it's really, really important that you always Light Orb that door to your right, that you're always making sure that the rogue cannot push you from invis and that he cannot sneak up on you. Because if he can, then you're most likely going to die. So this spell is really, really nice, apart from the fact that it also just illuminates rooms really well. So if you're fighting mobs, or you're in a situation where you can't really see and you would like some visibility, you can always cast a Light Orb. It's a very nice quality of life spell. Moving on, the slow spell. Now, the slow spell is really, really good at a higher knowledge. With this kit, I have 46 knowledge, which in my opinion is sort of the sweet spot. You don't really want to go above, 50 to 60, because at 51, you really start to hit that curve of diminishing returns. And at 45, 46, 47, you're kind of at that sweet spot where I'm getting to 85% casting speed, plus I'm going to have the 10% casting speed from haste. So I'll be around 95%. And then if you're playing with a bard, for example, you'll also get the 3-all from that. And then you'll be at like a sweet spot of just around 100 to 110% casting speed. And paired with slow, this is really, really good, because not only am I going to always be at a high move speed with my haste and invis, I'm going to be able to fast cast the slow and really create distance if I need to. Or in combination with some other spells, which I'll touch on in a little bit, slow can be really, really powerful. You just need to know when to use it properly. You obviously don't really want to be slowing somebody that's directly on you, in my opinion. That usually will get you killed. If somebody is chasing you and you need to run away, the best spell to play is probably going to be either an Invis, just insta-cast an Invis, try and look down, make your hitbox smaller, and walk behind them so that you're out of their line of sight and your after image doesn't show up. Or possibly casting magic missiles to sort of like create a little bit of gap. You don't really want to be using this if somebody is already on you. That can cause some issues. So moving on to Lightning Strike. This is one of those spells that works really, really well and synergizes really nicely with slow. So if I hit a slow and then I follow it up by a Lightning Strike, if we do the math here a little bit, this is going to give them a 40% move speed negative bonus for 2.5 seconds. And then this spell, if casted right after, is actually going to reduce their movement speed as well by 20% for 1 second. So you can get a total of 60% negative movement speed on your target and really close a gap and create some space between you and them. And Lightning Strike with slow is a really good combination. So this is one of those combinations that you'll use mostly against a fighter or a cleric or a barbarian or even a rogue at times. Now, why wouldn't you really want to use this against a wizard or a ranger or a warlock? The reason that you really wouldn't want to use that against those classes is because they're caster classes. So the slow, although it is going to probably do some damage to them and maybe put them in a uncomfortable situation where they can't properly kite, they can also just cast spells back on you, and you really don't want to be in a wizard 1v1 or in a warlock 1v1 or a ranger 1v1. You want to try and take as little damage as possible and try and keep up damage on them. And there are faster casting spells that will do more damage than Lightning Strike. This spell is really good against shield users because it's the only spell in the game right now that can really damage a shield user. And so in tandem with the slow, it's a really, really good combination. Now moving on to the right side wheel, I have magic missiles. These are going to be a little bit of a tricky spell to properly understand. I like to keep these for PvP as well, but they're very good for PvE. Now, if a rogue comes at you, or if a fighter is pushing you and they're just swinging randomly and they don't have their shield up, or a barbarian pushes you, this is kind of like your Hail Mary. I've had multiple situations where a barbarian has just W keyed me, thought they could win, and I pull out the missiles, and I like to stack a lot of true damage, I'll be able to melt them with missiles. So it's really important that you keep these 5 charges and don't waste them on PvE, because it is kind of like your saving grace whenever you're getting pushed by a melee guy. This spell is really important to have. Obviously, then, for example, for bossing, this is going to be your main spell that you're using against bosses, as it does so much damage. You want to try and maximize. And the fact that it also scales with headshots just really synergizes with the whole PvE aspect, because most PvE is very directional. It's very easy to aim and make sure that you're always getting that sweet spot. But magic missiles is going to be your main melee push away. So you're going to use that to sort of send melee players off, get them away from you, and make sure that they can't push you. Moving on to Zap. So a lot of wizards make the mistake of fighting other wizards with magic missile or other rangers with magic missile. This spell, although it's very powerful, is also, it has its drawbacks. You have to stand still to cast it. Now, whenever you're standing still to cast this, I can just zap a wizard for free. And so many wizards have pushed me, and I'm talking about like high-ranking wizards. I'm in Demigod right now, and I've fought so many of the top wizards, and they'll all push, and most of them have used magic missiles before, trying to just send it off, and it rarely works, because what I can do is I can just double zap them. And 2 zaps will generally kill a wizard. If not, on the 3rd, you're killing them. In rare cases, like really, really rare cases, I'm almost in like a full Bisgear set. I have 140 HP. And even then, with 34% MR, I would take 4 zaps to kill me, probably, if somebody had the same gear as me. But that's still 4 zaps, and they're kind of sitting still, so it's a free target. And you can just go back and forth, casting the zap, hopping, while they're casting on you. Zap is also another really, really good spell for just, sort of weaving around your teammates. Whenever you're fighting behind your teammates, oh yeah, I should probably mention that too for Lightning Strike. So you never want to really fireball while there's people in front of you, your teammates. Or you never really want to Ice Bolt, because the Ice Bolt hitbox is pretty big. So Lightning Strike is going to also be a go-to spell for that. Lightning Strike works and casts beyond teammates. So if you just move your mouse up and you aim it past them, it's going to land past them. It's not actually, it's not like a projectile. You can kind of aim it further ahead and kill people while you're literally sitting safe behind your cleric or your fighter or your barbarian, whatever it is. And that's what Zap is too, because Zap has a really, really small hitbox, and you can really weave it in between players and do some damage while not actually risking position or giving yourself up and showing yourself. Moving on to Fireball. Fireball, in my opinion, is one of the stronger spells just because it scares people. It has a fear factor to it. If you see a fireball coming towards you, you kind of push back. You don't really push up because people are scared of the damage that it outputs. Now, this spell can direct headshot, direct body shot, and also has an AoE splash. This is going to be your main like zoning damage dealing spell. Usually what you use this for is whenever you're down a long corridor and somebody's running away, for example, they're opening that door, you want to lob this at them, try and get that headshot, try and hit them, do as much damage as possible. Or if, for example, they're around a corner, you can kind of splash it on the floor, try and get a little bit of poke damage on them. It's really important that you use this spell to sort of create space and start applying pressure to the enemy team. Apart from that, it synergizes really, really well because you have a perk that I'll probably go over in another video, the Fire Mastery perk. You really want to use that anti-heal with it as well. And so whenever you're poking people, they're also soaking up a lot more heals, and you're just draining the enemy fight. This is a really, really good spell to drain the enemy and get them low. Moving on, we have Chain Lightning. Chain Lightning, it's a really hit or miss spell. If you know how to use it and you have good targeting, and for example, let's say you see like 2 mob bodies in front of you, right? You can secure a safe chain if the other mob body, the second one in line, is further away from you than the body in front of you. And so you can kind of use that to safe chain anywhere you want, hit around corners, and if you don't know, you can hit PvE bodies and it will chain off of them. So chain is a really, really good spell to just sort of do a lot of AoE damage to the enemy team. In general, you never really want to chain off of a player. It's very, very risky, and in most scenarios, considering there's PvE in every single room in the dungeon, you'll have a body to chain off of, and securing that chain means that you don't have to rely on aim, you don't have to rely on distance, you can just secure chain that body and it will hop, and you know it for sure, and it does a lot of damage still. Although they did nerf it a little bit, that it kind of drops off with each spell, it's really, really powerful still. And for example, if there's a rogue as well, it will hit that rogue in Invis, and it will scare the hell out of them, and you'll send them running because you're doing a lot of damage with this spell. And finally, moving on to Ice Bolt, this spell is going to be your main range spell. So, for example, you're in a long corridor, or you're fighting in Bridge Room, and there's another team across. This spell has a low recharge time. It's very, very high damage because it multiplies with headshots. And the only thing that you have to be a little weary of is that the hitbox on it is quite large. So you can't really weave it in between fences and stuff like you can, for example, Fireball. But it's still going to be a very, very heavy-hitting, high-damage spell. It slows people. If a Barbarian's running at you, for example, you can work this in tandem with Slow, and you can slow them, and then the slow from the Ice Bolt, kind of like with the Lightning Strike, works really, really, really well, and lets you create a lot of distance and just free cast on them without them ever being able to catch you. Ice Bolt is one of those spells that takes a lot of skill to use because it requires a lot of trajectory and aim, but once you get it down, it is super satisfying to hit those headshots and those one-taps. So now the spells that I don't run. I'll talk about these very, very briefly, and I'll go over why I don't really run them, and in what situations they could be good. Now, Ignite. Ignite's damage is not very substantial, and some people will use it to PvE clear, but to be honest with you, if you just get a Crystal Sword, you're more than likely to clear any room that you need to. You're not going to have much trouble with mobs. I suggest everybody go watch a tutorial on how to clear mobs because that's the most important part. If you can duck, and almost every single mob has a pattern that you can reliably 100% not take damage from, Ignite is just not really for PvE. It's not going to help you that much. It's not that big. and you're giving up so many other crucial spells to get a lesser tier or a lower utility spell, in my opinion. It can be good for people running the Ignite build with Arcane Shield and running like an Ignite Wizard build. But even then, I don't really like Ignite Wizard because you're putting yourself in front of the enemy. Whereas a Wizard, you're more of a caster, right? You want to keep that distance. You want to keep fighting people at that distance and sort of control the battlefield with space. Whereas Ignite, you're literally putting yourself in front of a melee target who can 2-tap you, and it's still going to take you 3 to 4 hits to kill them. So it's never really like a good spell. You're giving up the sort of essence of Wizard, and it's very, very troll in my opinion. The only case that I can really see a good argument for here is PvE clear, but even then, there's just better spells to do it. And moving on to Explosion, people still run Explosion. I've never really liked Explosion in comparison to, for example, Zap, right? Let's analyze it. I'm doing 5 more damage with this spell, but it detonates after 3 seconds. And not only that, but it's a higher tier. So my zaps, for example, they're tier 1. I get these zaps back instantly. Like I sit down and in 10, 15 seconds, I have all my zaps back. This is going to take me a good minute to get all my spells back. So I'm gaining 5 damage, but it's also going to take me like 300% more time to be able to get all those spells back and be able to cast. And on top of that, it's only 4 instead of 5 charges. So I think Zap is just a better Explosion in my opinion because it's instant damage. You're hit scanning them. You're casting fast. Oh yeah, the cast time on this as well is slower. So you're casting fast, and there's not a situation that I would rather have Explosion over Zap. Zap is just a better Explosion in this current state. If Explosion did more damage, I would definitely consider running it. But just the fact that it's only 5 extra damage versus Zap for that big of a trade-off, it's just not worth it in my opinion. But yeah, so that's all the spells. Let me know if you guys want me to make a video going over the perks and sort of like synergies with different perks. That could also be a pretty cool video to do. And if you liked it, then give the video a like, subscribe, and have a nice day.